من كوريا الجنوبية حركة تضامن شعبية مع غزة والقضية الفلسطينية، تضامن سياسي واقتصادي وثقافي وحتى موسيقي. المؤازرة وحركة التضامن الكورية الجنوبية مع القضية الفلسطينية من الداخل. معكم زينب الصفار، تابعونا. على الرغم من عمق العلاقات الاقتصادية والأكاديمية والعسكرية بين كوريا الجنوبية وإسرائيل، إلا أن هذه العلاقة تناقض المشاعر الكورية الجنوبية، حيث مرت البلاد بفترة طويلة من الاحتلال العسكري والاستعمار، والكوريون الجنوبيون عانوا ما عاناه ويعانيه الفلسطينيون. موقف كوريا الجنوبية من القضية الفلسطينية تبدل على نحو ملحوظ، فالدولة التي كانت تساند الفلسطينيين وحقوقهم في السبعينيات والثمانينيات من القرن الماضي، ودعت إلى انسحاب القوات الإسرائيلية من الأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة بما فيها القدس الشرقية، غيرت موقفها بعد اتفاقية أوسلو، ولجأت إلى تأطير القضية الفلسطينية والاحتلال بإطار الصراع لا أكثر.
يعني شعب بيستحيش ولا بيخجل ولا عندهم ذرة فهم ولا أخلاق ولا دين.
والدليل أن كوريا الجنوبية امتنعت عن التصويت على العديد من القرارات التي تخص فلسطين في الأمم المتحدة، ومنها على سبيل المثال الامتناع عن التصويت على إرسال فريق تقصي الحقائق إثر العدوان الإسرائيلي على غزة في 2008-2009، مدعية أن حماس أخطأت وأن ما اقترفته إسرائيل من مجازر ضد الفلسطينيين مبرر من باب الرد.
نحلف بعيونك شاهد، نحلف بعيونك شاهد.
العلاقات الاقتصادية والأكاديمية مع إسرائيل تناقض دستور كوريا الجنوبية والتزاماتها في ظل القانون الدولي، وأيضاً التزاماتها الأخلاقية كدولة عانت من الاحتلال، كما وتناقض موقف كوريا الجنوبية في الأمم المتحدة بالنسبة إلى المستوطنات الإسرائيلية. في عام 2003 على صوت العديد من منظمات المجتمع المدني والمنظمات اللاحكومية ضد الحكومة في سيول، مستنكرة دعمها لاضطهاد الفلسطينيين. الصحفي والناشط الكوري الجنوبي ومستشار المنظمة اللاحكومية ميدي بيس لشؤون الشرق الأوسط تايوون كيم، ماذا يخبرنا عن مدى وعي الكوريين الجنوبيين ومناصرتهم للقضية الفلسطينية؟ وماذا عن مشاهداته في غزة بعد زيارته التضامنية الأخيرة لها؟ وما الأسباب الحقيقية وراء إفلات إسرائيل من العقاب على جرائم الحرب التي ارتكبتها ضد الفلسطينيين؟ وماذا عن الشركات الكورية الجنوبية التي تستفيد من الاحتلال الإسرائيلي لفلسطين؟ Taeyeon Kim, a South Korean peace activist and journalist and advisor on the Middle East at MediPeace, which is an NGO. Welcome to the Inside. Mr. Kim, how did the solidarity of the South Korean people start with the Palestinian cause? What is the history of this solidarity?
Yeah, actually there were kind of like a small or single individual level of the solidarity, but which was not very, how to say, loud enough to let other people to participate together. I would say, like, for example, like our organization, Palestine Peace Solidarity, in Korea was founded in 2003. Like, it was kind of like in response of American invasion in Iraq, so that like more people were more interested about like, what's happening in the Middle East.
So it's a very recent solidarity issue.
Yeah, I mean in Korea, like still so far, I mean even now, like people's interest about like what's happening outside Korea, which is compared to other countries quite small and quite, like, how to say, like not enough.
Now, concerning your case, how did you get attached, so to say, to the issue of Gaza and the Gaza siege and the attacks on Gaza? When did you get involved in such an action?
It's quite hard to say when exactly, because I cannot say about this issue without the whole Palestinian things. Firstly, personally, my approach to the Palestinian matter was 2007. I mean, because I've been so much interested in like human rights and those kind of things, and I really wanted to see what's happening with my both eyes, because like reading books are not enough. Sometimes I need to see like with my perspective. And in 2007, I went to the Palestine, which is the West Bank, and I participated and joined some of the solidarity movement inside of the West Bank. And after I stayed 2 months or 3 months, I realized that what's happening inside of the Palestine was even more serious than
inside the occupied territories. Yes. Yeah, it is more serious than what you really know, what you really read about. You witnessed this with your own eyes.
Yeah, because like the media and with the internet, the informations are very much selective and very limited.
How did you go to Gaza?
This time, like it was 1 week ago.
And I think you are part of a group who went there in solidarity.
Yeah. Actually, like, let me introduce myself really quickly. I'm mostly like, working for the Palestine Peace Solidarity, but also at the same time, I'm kind of like an advisor on the Middle Eastern matters at the Medipeace, which is a Korean-based medical NGO. And we saw what happened about like 3 months ago in Gaza, and I also really like feel kind of really huge burden as the same human being. What's happening to the Palestinian people, there was a total injustice. So I mean, as an international, what I could do is to work with some kind of, to those kind of like a humanitarian approach. And through the Medipeace, I mean, they were kind of like proposing me that they are kind of interested in running some kind of emergency relief programs, and I addressed them to the Palestinian matter, especially in Gaza. I kind of like managing or making like a network with local Palestinian NGO in Gaza, and yeah, we were successful deliver some amount of the medication which is needed in 6 primary health clinics in Gaza strips.
In this sense, you know, just very recently, according to Human Rights Watch recent report on February 14th, 2013, at least 18 Israeli airstrikes during the fighting in Gaza in November 2012 were in apparent violation of the laws of war. And it said that after a detailed investigation into the attacks, these airstrikes killed at least 43 Palestinian civilians, including 12 children. What's your comment on this issue? Despite all this, and despite of the fact that the Human Rights Watch is saying this, but there is complete impunity of the Israelis.
I mean, like, that is like some point for many other international people to forget about what's happening in Palestine. Impunity and no one interest, and same thing going on. So what I feel is like really frustrating every moment. And also because there were pretty much like a huge attacks sporadically going on in Gaza. So compared to those kind of like a huge attack, people think easily this attack is like a kind of like a small thing compared to previous one, and people easily forget about. I myself, it's so frustrated like what's happening in Gaza. I mean, basically it's all come from the siege which imposed by Israel. And
unfortunately, some Arab countries also helped Israel on that siege.
I mean, like, I cannot say not some, quite many. And for me, like Arab country, they're making a speech against Israel, but at some point in deep in details, they don't do any serious, how to say, the approach. For example, like of changing foreign policy, or you know, kind of boycotting Israeli related to products in their country. Not really.
Let me just go back to the issue of how much the South Koreans know and how much are they aware of the Palestinians and all the problems that they've been facing, and the occupation, and you know, their plight on the ground. What can you tell us about this issue more, and to what extent do they know and support the cause of the Palestinians?
Even compared to, I mean, can I say like international standard, but compared to other foreign countries, in awareness of the Palestinian matters in South Korea are really, really few. And very few people are really getting into to solve the problem and about like what's happening in between, not in between, but about like Palestine. So I would say like, like 3 months ago, after people watch enough news about Gaza, the awareness of the Palestine. Now it's a little bit raised, but I'm pretty much like guessing it's gonna be go down again.
But you know, some people, they took to the streets, South Koreans, and they made some songs also as...
I make some song, maybe, I'm so sorry, but I was playing guitar. And
you were playing the guitar in the video, yes.
Yeah, the
yes.
Gaza Tonight, like my house. Yeah, my organization actually like organized with other peace activist group. I mean, there were a couple of the peace activist group, and whenever something happened, we worked together. We made a kind of organized a demonstration in front of Israeli embassy, tried to send our letter of the protest to the ambassador at the Israeli embassy in South Korea, and also we marched for the kind of commemorating the people who died from the Israeli war. Israeli attack on Gaza.
Now, also the Gazans, they just, you know, used this brilliant hit by the Gangnam Style, and they took it and they made the Gaza Style, which is a kind of comic, dark comic video about their hardships that the Gazans are going through and experiencing in the Gaza Strip. Have you seen the video?
Yeah, I've seen the video, and I could, how to say, understand better, especially after I stayed in Gaza actually. And I would say Gazan people...
Is it related to the reality on the ground?
Yeah. I mean, I would say Gazan people are really strong. I mean, if we like see the history, what happened in that land, the Gaza Strip, for more than 100 years ago, it was a kind of geographically really important part. So, which means it has been invaded by so many countries, so many times, and what was like amazing thing for me in Gaza, like normally people who suffered, who experience like a war or series of the violence can be really, how to say, the cold or like a very much like protective, but they were like out of my imagination. They were so nice and super nice, and how to say, they were really good at recovering. That was the strength of the Gaza and the people in Gaza. So even though, I mean, I really don't want to say this, even though Israel is gonna keep attacking Gaza, but the people at some point somehow they will survive. They're really strong, and they are really good.
It's the steadfastness,
and
the sumud of the...
And also the Gaza style was, I mean, it's really pathetic to see. I mean, it makes me laugh, but really black comedy. But also that means that it's also like a part of the Gazan people's like general mind about their recovery.
Just let me go back to your trip and your expedition to Gaza. Can you tell me a bit about what you've experienced while being there? What have you seen in Gaza?
It's also like really important point for like foreigners. Normally, like for Korean people and for many other international people, Gaza is somehow like synonyms of disastrous and or hell or no one's living, something like that. But what I see there, what I saw there, like people just like living and people struggling to live their normal life, same as everywhere. Like people, some of the people were very happy with their new iPhone 5, and people like, we just like have like the same life. I mean, like people don't imagine that, cannot think that there will be violence. I mean, people thinking Gaza as somewhere like a Middle Ages, which is pretty much Israeli ones. But what I see, like people there, just like same as everywhere, and they're also like trying to live their life
as
normal.
usual.
Also that what is like really important things as more foreigners see, like the same normal life.
What about the suffering of the people there?
Suffering of the people. I mean, if you want to get to really deep inside of the suffering, you're not gonna reach. I mean, like what I saw there was basically so many broken buildings and so many people, like a really high rate of unemployment. For example, I was visiting some of the villages near the border area, and most of the house has no one supporting, no one working. So mostly what they're relying on was a food stamp, food coupon, food voucher from the UNRWA. And I asked them, what do you eat daily? Khubuz and zatar. That's it. That was what daily they were eating every meal. I mean, like, how frustrating, and also like that's kind of like, how to say, compared to other people, I would say it's kind of like a really not good, but okay case, especially people who were directly affected by Israeli attacks, who lost their legs and who suffering from, you know, like a trauma, who lost their family member. Those things never ever be recovered.
Right. Taeyoon Kim, South Korean journalist and peace activist. We're going to stop now for a short break, and then we'll be back to talk more about your visit to the Gaza Strip. A short break and we'll be back. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Inside. Welcome back, Taeyoon Kim. Well, actually, since you work as an advisor for an organization, an NGO, how far are the NGOs and the organizations raising awareness concerning the Palestinian issue and cause, and to what extent can those NGOs affect the government policies?
This is something we have to kind of like continuously working on. You know, like this time we were there for, having said that, delivering like a medication, and we were having like a partnership with the local NGO. You know what we were told? We were the first Korean NGO to come to Gaza to be with, to show solidarity with the Gaza people. And so, which means that normally like a Korean-based NGO, they don't work too much about like, no case on the Gaza especially. I mean, there will be some kind of like an NGO running a project in the West Bank or other parts, but for Gaza, we were the first NGO.
And concerning other NGOs in South Korea, they are so much detached from the wars that are taking place in the Middle East.
Yeah, and I like to tell you something.
But I mean, usually NGOs and certain kind of NGOs, they tend to a certain extent to affect the policies or affect the mass movements.
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna like say, maybe because of the geographical, distance between Gaza and South Korea, and also very difficult accessibility to Gaza. There's no kind of like an NGO approach to the Gaza. But as the first one, I mean, like
what about the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions? You have something in Korea.
Yep, BDS movement. We have now we are kind of like keep working on the BDS, especially against the Hyundai heavy industry. They are selling their excavators and bulldozers to Israeli company, and they're like kind of selling it to the IDF. So what we can see is Hyundai bulldozers are being used by Israeli army to destroy Palestinians' house in Area C and E1 area. So we are, because of all of those kind of like settlements and destroying Palestinians' house in that land is against international law. So we are kind of making the boycott movement against the Hyundai heavy industry.
Taeyoon Kim, in an August 2012 report on Korea's complicity in Israel's occupation, colonialism and apartheid, there was a highlight of certain Korean companies profiting from the occupation. What are some of the major Korean companies that are profiting from the Israeli occupation?
I would say there are many, but what
is it only the Hyundai?
No, not only Hyundai. There are many companies, but what is a difficult thing is as an NGO, we have a really little accessibility to the informations of those kind of things. But what we just like found out, the biggest thing is gonna be Hyundai heavy industry, but also recently, a couple of months ago, Daewoo Incorporation, they sold the 4 patrol ships to Israeli Navy, and also there are some of the like IT company kind of like working with Israeli army, with the Israeli weaponry, the companies. There are quite many.
What should you do to raise awareness more of the Palestinian issue in your country?
Yeah, that's a really difficult thing because most of the media...
Is it so difficult for people to understand the plight of others? We all pass through whatever the Palestinians are passing through.
Yeah. Having said that, like a lack of information, media don't cover much about like a Palestine. So our group is trying to, I would say, like address the the information of the Palestine to the people. I mean, we just like last year we released our report about the Korea and Israel relationship, which is covering about Korean companies get involved in the Israeli occupations, and also like a governmental arm trade and stuff like that.
It was a very long relationship.
Yeah.
It is still a very long relationship. It's been since the
very
1950s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kim, in the context, how do you assess the role of the Security Council in the non-implementation of the resolutions passed on Palestine?
That's a real shame, and then I feel like why do they exist? I mean, like for example, if there is some interest on which related to in favor of the America or like Western society, they are doing just like this. For example, like let us get back to what happened in 1991. Right after Iraq invaded Kuwait,
they imposed
really
sanctions.
quick. Yeah, like this. But what's happening about like for the Palestinian people, it's really long and painful times, more than tens of years, and they still suffering the same as 60 years ago. And you know, I feel really skeptical about like what's the role of the Security Council of UN. And also I kind of like feel sorry about like the Korea government. They've been always abstain to vote on the resolution about Palestine and Israel.
Right, and also in 2003, we all know that the South Korean government dispatched its forces in support of the US-led aggression and invasion against Iraq and the Iraqi people.
Yeah.
How do you explain this?
I mean, like according to Korean government, it's like a humanitarian aid armed dispatch. For example, most of the personnel are composed of the doctors or whatever for the construction, but there is no excuses to participate American-led invasion on Iraq. There is no doubt Korea government participated in invasion on Iraq.
So, in your opinion, do you think that there is a legal affair or a just legal status? Does it really exist?
For the dispatching the army in South Korea? I mean, like what I like to say is as long as those things are passed by parliament, this is pretty much like a put on the implementation.
Let me just say it put differently. In your view, does an international and legal system really exist?
I would say in terms of like international law implemented in South Korea, I mean, I would say it's really hard to find. You will find like many cases against international law.
I mean, those people who are responsible for all these crimes against the Palestinian people and the Iraqi people and their land. But as we said before, that there is complete impunity. So is there a kind of international law that just goes and tries those people?
I mean, it's like I said, it's gonna be pretty much like the same answer. I mean, Korean government, they said we're gonna agree on this international law and this international law, but in the matter of the implementation in domestic law, I mean, it's quite nah.
Now, how do you see the picture now that you took part in the legal conference on Palestine from settlement to violations of human rights? How do you see the prospect of a legal system concerning Palestine?
I mean,
are you optimistic?
I'm doubt with the legal system or whatever, because like international society highly emphasizing on the Israelis violations of international law for more than like 30 years or 40 years. But I mean, we barely achieved something. We barely achieved the changes of Israeli policy. So it's how to say, I'm kind of skeptical of those kind of approach. But for people, for normal people to get to know about the Israeli aggressions are against international law, that's really important. What I believe, the more people concerning on the Palestinian issue, the more possibility of the problem to be solved.
So you think that also this is the duty of the media outlets, especially in a country like South Korea?
And not only about like South Korea, like I mean, I should be very selective to to watch the news or like to select the newspaper for the information resources. But nowadays, what is like a good thing, thanks to social media, also during the last war, which was 3 months ago, I mean, we could hear some of the raw material, raw stories from the people through their Twitter and through their Facebook.
The
so
social
that we
media
could have
networks.
better pictures of what's really happening inside of the Gaza Strip, not only about the biased media.
Now, what can you tell us about the song that you made for the people who were suffering in Gaza during the Israeli aggression against Gaza in 2012?
2012, actually that was not my song, and that's Michael Hart's like Gaza Tonight something, yeah, but it's
But you
really,
sang the song.
Yeah, it's really well known among the international society because it was a kind of to show the solidarity. I mean, I just like wanted to show them there are Korean people living far away from Gaza but still worrying about like the Gaza people suffering from the Israeli attacks.
Kim, what do you like to add concerning the issue of boycott, divestment and sanctions and some of the people who are starting to boycott certain Korean companies?
Yeah. And for example, like I just like to give you an example of the Hyundai. I mean, Hyundai nowadays is not only like a domestic company, it's like a multinational company. And to do like practical and effective the boycott movement, it should come from many other countries. It should be like worldwide. I mean, we already made kind of like a statement of the protest about like Hyundai heavy industry and Hyundai stuff, what they are doing in the West Bank, but they didn't listen. But you see, in the Middle East, not only Middle East, there are so many Hyundai cars. There are so many countries are good customer of the Hyundai stuff. If the boycott movements come from every country worldwide, I mean, they're gonna be more affected by that. They're gonna, put their more effort to listen.
You're going to hit
people.
their pockets.
Yeah. So it's the matter they're gonna lose Israel market or they're gonna lose international market, which is gonna be much bigger than Israel itself.
Right, Kim Tae-yoon, South Korean peace activist, journalist and advisor on the Middle East at Medipeace NGO. Many thanks indeed for this interview with The Inside.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, sir. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة ودائما من الداخل. بريدنا theinside@almayadeen.net. إذا theinside@almayadeen.net. دمتم بخير.